Per usual, guys, today we'll be talking about the Golden State Warriors. We'll be doing an off-season preview on what we think they need to do this year. And I'd like to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you guys expect the Warriors to do and why? And what do you hope? This was a team that until Mr. Steph Curry got hurt, it seemed like they could have been a dark horse to do something special. Now, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into today's video. First off, this is a team that they're locked into the Jimmy Butler Curry duo, and I have no problem with it. I think they're kind of a good yin and yang. Curry is still special, and when he's playing, it allows Buddy Hield to do what Klay Thompson was doing for him, to take the gravity or take advantage of the gravity that Curry creates and be the secondary complementary scorer at times, while Jimmy Butler is the downhill, foul drawing, grinds the defense down offensive player who takes the heat off of Curry and can create for other people. In the draft, they'll have the 41st pick. I could see them either going big or a wing. We'll talk specifically who later. And let's get into it. Does this team have another title run? That's the biggest thing. They finished 48 and 34, which was third in their division, seventh in the West, and they bowed out in the Western semis against Minnesota. And Curry went down with an injury. It sucked. And the Warriors spent the season at first treading water, and then they were able to figure it out as Butler came aboard, creating this unmatched offensive gravity, ball movement that really had only a few cracks, which was not like a true big who would take the pressure off against the Jokic's and stuff, just like an interior, a Steven Adams kind of guy. And that's why we're hearing maybe Upwork Lopez could be coming to town. And does that mean they go back to center by committee like they did in the good old days of the Warriors? And I'm talking about the heyday of the dynasty. Now, this was a team that they did do offensively. It was interesting. If you watch this team, as they were two different units. So the Warriors post what, All-Star break, were one of the better teams, I would say. They were 17th in points per game, but I don't think that tells the true story. They were 8th in defensive rebounds, and they had the offensive firepower. At times, their defense struggled, and I think their playoffs gave us a snapshot of how they slipped out of gear. So in the postseason, the Warriors' offense sputtered, especially when Butler was out and Curry was getting hunted at times, or once Curry got hurt. And that went down to 103 points per game. Obviously, in the playoffs, you're going to score less, but that's a 10-point per game difference. And their opponents were scoring 106 points per game on them, which still, that was actually better than the 110 points they were allowing. However, we mentioned it earlier, in the playoffs, you're scoring very little. And they were just constantly beating on the boards. They were allowing like 44, 45 rebounds a game, and they were barely breaking 40. So it's hard to win a basketball game if you can't control the boards. I say this all the time. If you can grab rebounds, you get to get second chance opportunities, start fast breaks, kind of control the tempo of the game. But more importantly, you impose your physical will. Okay? When you physically impose your will, you grind your opponent down to the point where they just lose morale and they don't feel like they're going to be able to get stuff in terms of like a loose ball, hustle plays, rebounds, and it galvanizes your team. And Curry still delivered, all right, when he played, especially in the playoffs, 23, 5 and 5, shooting near 48%, 40% from three. And Jimmy Butler was averaging 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Like, this is still a unit, but they don't have a ton of room to maneuver. That's the big problem here. If I can pull up this little presentation we have right here, this is kind of what we see. So we're hearing Kuminga is this is the interesting thing to me, and we'll definitely put together some trades. But Kuminga is allegedly going to be a guy that could be signed and traded, and I wonder if he's a guy. The only really team that could go out and get him is the Brooklyn Nets, maybe Detroit. But if you're the Brooklyn Nets, what are you asking for? As this is a team that's going to be at 171 million projected salary. They're below the thresholds, and they'll have all the exceptions available to them. To me, the biggest thing when you look at trying to flip Kaminga, and I think that is going to have to be a team like the Nets, as they're the only ones with salary. And I really, we'll talk Pistons in a second, but I find it hard to believe you would go out and get yourselves into a situation where, I don't know, I think paying Kaminga whatever he thinks is worth is not enough. And it's just, let's sign and trade him just to find at least something that we can work with. And you can only take half the salary back. So that's where I think, looking at the Nets roster, you would love to get Cam Johnson on this team. And the way to do that, if we go back, would have to be some sort of combination, sign and trade, which would be a non-simultaneous transaction, and then a second transaction to make the deal work. Of, I think you would want to throw in probably either a combination of Santos or Post, or I mean, my apology, not Post, Santos or Waters, and with, of course, Kaminga, and that would probably get you to a little bit over half of Johnson's contract. But I don't know if they have the capital to get that then in terms of draft assets. So if you go over to Detroit, you're trying to find a team trying to dump a player, and that's how you would get Mr. Kuminga off your team. And you could always say that maybe they sign and trade Jonathan Kuminga to the Bucks for Brooke Lopez. That's a possibility too. It gets a little trickier there. And however, that is something that they could do, and not to keep out of you know, your mind. Now, the only other one that I think, if they really wanted to get interesting, could be a Jonathan Kuminga trade for like a Simone Fontecchio. I think that, again, would just be a bit, if they're just trying to find some shooting and some more size. To me, I think if they can continue to look at this, where, look, they're going to bring back Looney. They're probably going to bring back Gary Payton. I believe both on veteran minimums. They like it. And they can use their full mid-level exception if they want to stay under their first apron. And that's after drafting someone with the 41st pick, which I think Maxime Renault, if he's there, there's a few bigs that if they're back end of the draft available, I would go after. But to me, I think you look at this team, Brooke Lopez, Quinn Post, Kevon Looney, I think you solve that. In the draft, you then go shooting. A Chaz Lanier could really fit well for them. As I said, their core's locked in. They need some center help, which I think by committee could work, and some bench depth. They have a manageable payroll, but I do believe if they miss on the center, run it back, or they can't trade Kuminga for some rotational value, they're going to be calling it second round at best. But with Curry, Butler, and Draymond all still productive, I think they have at least one punch left in them to go out and do it. They have very few picks, and they do have the Anderson and Waters trade exceptions, but they really can't do anything too risky to mess up what they have right here. And New Orleans could be another team that's selling. You got to find a contract. If Kuminga wants 20, let's say somebody gives him 3 years, 20, I still think that's disgusting. Maybe it's the full mid level exception. So we're just going to look at $7 to $10 million just to give you guys an idea of what they could do before we wrap up this video. And I don't think John Conchar's money goes on too far. Okay, Io DeSumo could be a depth piece that they could go after if they wanted to sign and trade Kuminga, full mid-level exception. I think that one's a good one. You could do a Sean Tate. Nah, because you can sign and trade him. Jeff Green and, Jay Sean Tate. I don't know if they can be signing trades for signing trades. I wonder. I just don't like the idea of those guys or even a Gary Harris. Now, and I don't like Atlanta going after him for George Niang. I think that's just too beneficial for the Warriors. So you'd have to think, man, it definitely becomes difficult because the higher the salary goes, the less likely I think the team that would have the salary be interested in doing that. Like maybe if you really wanted to take a risk on Matisse Thybulle, you do a sign and trade for Matisse Thybulle, and the Trailblazers take a chance on him. But I think Io DeSumo was the one that I liked the most. And then it becomes, the contracts all, because you're looking at guys between 7 to 12 million or 7 to 10 million, depending on how much Kuminga is going to make, which I think is going to be between 14 and 20 on the high side. I really think it's just going to be the mid-level exception. So yeah, now hear your thoughts on that one. Like, comment, and subscribe.